Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So, just so you know, I am recording. And basically, what I want to do is try to get a timeline as to, what was going on with Almir. I've told you this in person, well, over the phone, but I'm just going to say it while the screen is recording. Your son is the reason why I stopped working with defects. I was working third shift in Jonesboro,
Mm-hmm.
and at the time, I was responsible for issuing meds and making sure the kids got to school. And one day, our mayor got into an altercation with a kid. Mind you, that some of the kids in that program were a little rougher than our mayor. He, once you got to talk to him and
Mm-hmm.
really like just one on one, uh, he would tug at your heart. He just had a way about him that was just humanistic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I connected with him mostly because he wasn't one of the kids that was jumping out of the window and threatening and all that. He was kind of like laid back
Mm-hmm.
uh, from the time that I knew him. So he got into it with a kid who was a tad bit more aggressive. And from my understanding, Amir's arm ended up getting broke or injured. And
Wow.
I thought, because I'm fresh into the system, I thought that they would have, because this particular company had different houses. They had about 4 or 5 houses. So I was like,
Right.
well, maybe they're going to move the kid or they'll move Amir. And when I got to work the next night, everybody was back where they were before the fight started out. The only difference is that they took all the doors off of of the rooms. And
Wow.
I did some soul searching, and I just have to ask myself because I do this not because it pay you a whole lot of money, but I do it because
Right.
I used to be Almir. I used to be
Mm-hmm.
these kids, so I would not have wanted somebody to mislead me or just be there pushing paperwork. So if I
Right.
can't add to your life, I'm not gonna be there. I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I quit. When I quit, they inquired. They was just like, well, one of the houses got investigated. They just actually called me and asked me, did I report them? I was like, no, but the fact that you calling and you asking me this further
Mm-hmm.
lets me know that y'all not on y'all P's and Q's. But it just, he changed how I move with certain kids. Because whenever
Mm-hmm.
I deal with male, female, I don't care if they're incarcerated with defects, in juvenile, at court, I always ask myself, am I bringing goodness to this person? Like, am I adding to his or her life? And if I can't do
Right.
that, then I either need to introduce you to somebody else or I need
Mm-hmm.
to get out the way. And it's just
Right.
that simple. So I want to first start off by saying I'm so sorry for your loss. Your son,
Thank you.
to me, was an awesome kid. I didn't even know that he had been incarcerated. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I worked with hundreds of kids in the past, and sometimes I see them, and they grow up. But I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know until a couple of days ago. I went to this page. I think it's like the Prison Coalition or whatnot, and I seen your post, and I was like, man, this dude looked like those eyes. I was like, that's Amir. Man, it
Mm-hmm.
just broke me down. It just broke me down. So
Wow.
can you please tell me what you're going through right now, and then we'll get off into the timeline.
Um, wow. I can't really put into words what I'm going through right now. I have a self-imposed mechanism. It's my self-protection. It's called autopilot,
Okay.
where I continue to function as if nothing has happened.
Okay.
Um, and I just do what needs to be done. I have my moments. I have crying spells. Um, I have moments. I'm constantly still trying to convince myself that my son is no longer. I went to the funeral home on Friday. I got to hold him. I got to kiss him. I got to apologize to him. I wanted to see him in his natural state, and I'm so grateful that Hines Funeral Home gave me the permission to do that. I wanted to see my son without makeup and artistry and clothes. I wanted to see him the way he came in the world and the way that he left.
Okay.
So that's what that's what I've been dealing with, and just trying to wrap my mind around it. Unfortunately for us, our family is also dealing with an additional death on my husband's side of the family. And we will be traveling to Los Angeles on Thursday to go to that funeral. So we've been hit kind of hard at the beginning of this year.
I am so sorry for your loss. I can't even wrap my mind around it. I can't even wrap my mind around it. Let me ask you this. How did Almir get into the DFAC system?
Okay, so we're going to go back to when Almir was about 14 years old, and I'm thinking I'm right on that. He was 14. All of his disorders started manifesting around 14.
Okay. And when you say disorders, what do you mean?
Okay, and I'm going to break that down for you. So Almir was eventually diagnosed as being autistic, suffering from bipolar disorder. And different people have said that he's had some form of schizophrenia, which was never really diagnosed or documented, but it had just been being mentioned. So I am the parent of 3 children who had special needs. Almir is my youngest.
Gotcha.
So I was very familiar with, milestones that a child is supposed to have as they're developing, their development, things of that nature. I did a lot of asking questions at school. I think, there's something going on with my son. He's not keeping up with his peers. He's struggling to accomplish minor tasks such as handwriting and things of that nature. How can I get him tested? No one could ever help me when it came down to the school system. And I recall calling, at the time we lived in Henry County. I called Henry County DFACS and I asked them, how can I take it and get a social worker, I guess, to maybe help me maneuver this and figure out what's going on with my kid, because I'm not an unrealistic parent. I have other kids with special needs. I'm recognizing that something's going on with my son, but I need some help here. They told me, well, it doesn't work that way, miss. In order for you to get a social worker for your son with defects, there has to be a deprivation of the child. Well, I'm not illiterate. I understand what that meant. And so I made a hard decision, and I talked to my family about it. And I said, the next time Almir has a mental crisis and he goes for a psych evaluation at our local hospital, when they call me to come and get him, I'm not going to go, because that is the deprivation of the child. That is going to get defects involved. That's going to get us a social worker. That's going to maybe help us get him into, some form of therapy, a psychiatrist, somebody that can help my son. And so that is exactly what happened. Of course, they hauled me into court. The next day after I didn't show up to the hospital to pick him up, they hauled me into court. And,
so wait, you not showing up is a strategic move in order to render help for your son?
Correct.
Got you. Proceed.
Correct. Okay. And so when we went to court, and I always, anytime the judge addressed me, and I believe it was Judge Bartles in Henry County, he was very abrasive, and I always stood my ground, and I opened every statement by stating, please let the record show that this is not a case of abuse, neglect, or abandonment. I purposely put my son in your care in an effort to get him some help. So now what is it that you want from me? So, we went through, I actually I had to pay $500 to Henry County Court. I had to pay for his psychological evaluation.
Wow.
He did have a psychological evaluation performed. The doctor who performed it, unfortunately, had added some verbiage to the psych evaluation, which I do have a copy of it. He stated that not only was Almir intellectually disabled at that time that he did the evaluation, but that as he continued to get older, and like I said, he was only 14 years old at the time, as he continued to get older and mature, he was going to continue to be psychologically, disabled, and he should not ever be put in a position where he's being deemed capable of standing trial for, because he really doesn't understand a lot of stuff that
Gotcha.
he does or what's going on around it.
Okay.
So, that being said, that's how he got into defects care.
Gotcha. And so, when he was in defects, what was the status of your relationship like? Did he understand why he was there, or did he have some type of resentment, or what was his mindset?
No, because I've always been there. I've always been involved. It was never, and I've tried to tell him that several times. It was never a case of, I don't want you at home, or I can't handle you. It was never that. It was, baby, I'm trying to get you some help. I'm doing the best I can.
Exactly.
I don't know what to do. I don't really understand the system. We were new to Georgia. We're not from here. We are from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Gotcha.
And so, we had visitation. I was concerned at some of the placements where they had my son, and this was before he started getting into group homes. They were putting him in different foster homes, and I was constantly, making sure I was taking my son food. And I mean, not a couple of, not just for the day, I would take him food for like the entire week.
Right.
Because, I understand different people come from different cultures. And when it comes down to being a foster parent in the state of Georgia, what I understand is they're not in a position to really take care of the children that they claim they're trying to help.
They're just trying to get a check. They're trying to get a check.
Exactly. And I remember they took him to some lady, she had a farm in McDonough. Almir was afraid of the animals. And I'm like, you done took this little black child from the inner city Philadelphia and put him on a farm with some white people and a bunch of animals he ain't never seen. He know he eat them for dinner, but he ain't never seen these things before in his life.
Right.
And so I remember speaking to him on a Sunday, and I asked him, I said, son, what did you have for dinner today? He said, oh, Miss So-and-so gave me a Hot Pocket. I said, she gave you a what?
A Hot Pocket.
A Hot Pocket. And that was what made me start. I started cooking and meal planning and meal prepping for my son, because my son is also a type 1 diabetic, and he has to be fed a certain way to accommodate his insulin. So I started packing his food. I remember even they had me doing supervised visitation at DFACS. And I would go and I would take his meals with me. And, I remembered one of his caseworkers came out one time and she said, we were just, because I already know they be watching you through a little two-way mirror. Right. They think of that's a two-way mirror. But anyway, they said we were surprised when he opened that container. He went straight for that spinach, like he was eating that vegetable. I said, yeah, I raised my kids on whole food. They don't eat junk. I don't feed my kids oodles and noodles at McDonald's all the time. They eat whole food.
Right.
And so, I've been involved. I don't think Almir was resentful at all. He wanted to come home. And I told him, I said, baby, it don't work that way because I put you in defects care. I'm trying to get you the help that you need. And, we got to ride it out a little bit, So I think it wasn't until he had, I'm trying to remember what happened after that, because like I said, he was in a couple of different foster homes. That didn't work. And then they started introducing him to these group homes. And he was struggling in that type of a social setting.
Right.
Because he's being housed with other boys. And just like you said, some of those boys are a little more aggressive.
Yep.
We don't have one of those rah-rah type families where everybody's fighting all the time. He ain't never been in no fight in his life.
Right.
So it was just, I struggled to watch him go through that. But, we had constant communication whenever they would let me communicate with my son, because it wasn't always free for me to just call or for him to just call me. It always had to be supervised.
Yeah.
My calls were always on speakerphone. Not like I had anything to hide. It's just that, there was just never a level of personable moment between a child and their mother when you're trying to heal. So, like I said, back and forth between the different group homes. He originally was arrested, I want to say, at age 16.
Okay.
He was in a group home, and I can't remember exactly which one because there were so many, but he was 16 years old. He was arrested. He was taken to juvenile detention, YDC, and then for some reason after that, they took him from YDC, I believe, to Clayton County Jail. And I was trying to find out why. And that's when I learned that in the state of Georgia, as it is in many states, that the age of an adult when it comes down to what they call a criminal offender is 16 years old.
Mm.
So if you're 16, you go to county jail. You don't go to YDC.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just heartbreaking for me that they actually thrown this child who was autistic and bipolar. And at that time, very immature. I mean, even at 16 years old, talking to Almir, you probably would have really been experiencing that of maybe a 9 or 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Psychologically.
Yeah.
So, you know, we went through all that we went through. And I believe at age 15, we were able to get him through DFACS. We were able to get him placed in Laurel Heights Psychiatric Facility, which is located up in Druid Hill.
Okay.
And Almir was admitted there, and he was housed there for 2 years until he turned 17. He turned 17, and I mean, throughout the 2 years, you know, we went for family visit every week. We weren't allowed to come except that one day. You know, we had interactions with him. He struggled in that setting. You know, he struggled when it comes down to social engagement. He struggled. And so he was released at age 17. They tried to put him, I believe they put him in a group home with a person who was mutual between you and I. I believe he went to one of those group homes. Okay. And so at age 17, and I want to say that was in 2018, he was arrested for an altercation he had at the group home, and I don't know if it was with staff or with another resident, but Almir was arrested. I forget what the charge was at the time. He was taken to Clayton County Jail. Again. I'm understanding that at Clayton County Jail, he was there 12 straight days. They didn't give him any insulin. And I remember him calling me, and I kept calling the jail, and I'm like, listen, I'm trying to get somebody to help my son. My son is in your jail. And they're like, what's his name? And I'm telling them his name is Almir Harris. And they're like, we don't have an Almir Harris here. Oh, my God. And I'm like, they play so many games, and this is the thing. And Mr. Butler, I promise you, why they were telling me Almir wasn't there is because Almir loves my husband, who is his stepfather. Okay. Very much, very much. He loved his stepdad. He loved my last name when I remarried. So he told the people that was his last name. Almir Harris Mungie is what he said, but it's Monge.
You know what? You mentioned that. I remember him always saying, my dad's coming to get me today. My dad's coming to get me. This dude would pack up all his stuff. Yeah. And like he would be waiting, and then if he was like, "Well, you want to look at it?" Nope, I'm not. I don't want to get into this episode because my dad is coming to get me.
But he told the people that his full last name included my last name, my married last name, and so they basically had him. He was lost inside this prison, inside the Clayton County Jail, for 2 weeks. So for 12 days, they didn't give my son any insulin.
Oh my God.
Now, I'm not aware of this because, you know, my son is calling me when he can. I know that my husband and I had traveled out of town. Almir didn't call while we were out of town. He didn't call when we got back. And we got back on September 12th, 2018.
Okay, hold on. Now, let me ask you this. I'm not a diabetic, and I've never really dealt with one. But what happens when a diabetic doesn't get their insulin?
Woo, baby. So with Almir, and I can't speak to other diabetics, but Almir is a type 1 diabetic. That means that his pancreas does not work. Okay. It doesn't produce insulin. So he must have insulin every day. That is his lifeline. Excuse me. He must have insulin prior to each meal. If his blood sugar is low, he doesn't get insulin. But if his blood sugar is high or normal, then he has to have it so that it you know, you have to bring the level to where it's supposed to be for him. And his numbers change from time to time, but when you don't give him insulin, what happens is Almir goes into something that's called DKA, that's diabetic ketoacidosis.
Okay.
And what it means is that his body becomes acidic. His body is basically poisoning him. His organs start to shut down. He has brain fog. He becomes disoriented. He can't function. You can be talking to him. He may be looking directly at you, but he's unresponsive. He's going into a diabetic coma. And that's what happens when you deprive a person of their insulin.
So he's at Clayton County jail for 12 days with no insulin?
No insulin. So when I got back in town on the 11th, on September 11th of 2018.
Okay.
2020 on the 12th of 2018 of September. We were just doing some things like refreshing the house. We had just gotten home, and I get a phone call, and I was joking around with my husband, like, I might as well go get y'all some tacos, because by the time I put all these groceries up, I'm not cooking anything.
Yeah.
So let's go get tacos. And it was a joke because I hate tacos. But anyway, my husband and I are walking out of our front door when I get a phone call from his defects caseworker.
Okay.
And the caseworker says to me, has anybody called you from Eggleston? And I'm like, no, why would anybody be calling me from Eggleston? He said, Ms. Monique, are you with your husband? I said, I am. He said, could you please get your husband to bring you to meet me at Eggleston Hospital? And I said, okay. I'm trying not to say the name unless I should say the name.
Right.
I said, okay, I can be there, but what's going on? So he goes on to tell me that Almir was found unresponsive in the jail. They didn't say where. They just told me he was found in the jail unresponsive. I was told that Clayton County correction officers took him to Southern Regional Hospital and dropped him off.
Why? Why did they take him to Southern Regional Hospital?
I have no idea. So they took him and dropped him off. I was told that there were, when I went to the hospital after the fact to ask some questions, and I was told that there were patients waiting to be seen who were going up to the nurse's station to say, listen, you can let this guy go in front of us. Y'all need to come and get him.
Right.
Something's really wrong with this young man.
Yeah.
And so when they finally got to Almir, they ended up having to life flight him to Eggleston Hospital. So we get to the hospital. Now, of course, he's in defects custody, so they don't take us directly to him or anything. I got to wait for the caseworker, and I got to wait for the social worker, and we had to wait for the corrections officers before we could go upstairs. So now we get upstairs, and they take me to this waiting room, and unfortunately, I have too much experience with the waiting room because good news comes at the bedside. Bad news comes in the conference room.
In the hall, yeah.
So they had us in a conference room, and I was freaking out because I'm like, I don't want to be in this room. I don't know why they put me in this room, but I want to know what's going on with my son.
Because you done been in that room before.
I have. So the doctor finally comes, and she says, okay, so can you tell me what you know about what's happened with your son? I said, I don't know nothing, and I don't have any time to play games with you. Please, just tell me what's going on with my child.
Okay.
So she said, okay. She said, what time did they call you? I said, I got called at 6:40 p.m. And she said, that makes sense because the helicopter landed on our roof at 6:25. And I'm saying to myself, what helicopter? That's how I found out he was life flighted there. She said, the helicopter landed on top of Eggleston Hospital at 6:25. I got called at 6:40. And I don't remember what time we actually got to the hospital because where we lived at the time was about an hour's drive in good traffic. So I think we were maybe an hour and a half out. And so she goes on to tell me that he's not out of the woods. His brain was swelling inside of his head. They had placed a shunt to try to relieve some of the pressure and the bleeding. They did finally take us in so that we could see him. And I promise you, the nurse was trying her best, I guess, to not lose her job. But at the same time, she was pissed off. She said they dropped this boy off to die. They shouldn't treat an animal the way they treat him. And she said those officers from Clayton County came in here and handcuffed him to this bed. This boy is unconscious. And she said to them, is that necessary? I have to work on him, and I need you to release his hands from the bed because I have to run his IVs and stuff.
Okay.
And so, you know, she was really trying to hit it home with me like, ma'am, you need to find some representation for your son.
So now let me ask you this. You sent me pictures of Almir in the hospital. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the pictures. And I remember the social worker walked in the room and was trying to tell me, ma'am, you can't take pictures. And I just looked at her and said, I want to see you stop me.
Yeah.
Because this is my son. I don't care that he's in defense custody. This is my son. And I'm going to take whatever pictures I want.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a problem with it, I suggest you go call the police because other than that, you need to back up off of me.
Yeah.
My son laying here on life support. So she didn't bother me anymore. She went about her business. But those are the photos that I sent you because that's what me and my husband walked into when we got to the hospital. He was on full-blown life support. So, of course, he gets off of life support, praise God, you know.
Yeah.
And he comes home with us. Now, I remember telling his caseworker, I want custody of my son back because y'all let this happen on your
done playing with
watch.
these people. You at this point,
Exactly.
you done seen what defects is done. You've seen what Clayton County has done. And you don't want your son to die at the hands of neglect and people not doing their job.
Exactly. So I told him I want custody of my son back. Well, his caseworker told me that his supervisor took me making that statement to me. She thought that I wanted them to give me back custody so I could pull the plug on my child.
What?
That's what I was told.
How you get that out of okay?
Thank you. I'm like, no, I want custody of my son back because y'all not doing a good job at all.
Yeah.
He should have never been in no jail. That's number one.
Period.
Right. So, you know, we go through all of that. And so Almir gets out. Clayton County had the audacity to bond him out on life support.
Oh, no, I'm confused.
Okay, they bonded him out. They came and handed the social worker the papers. The social worker, in turn, gave them after the corrections officers left. They handed us the papers where they released him on bond while he was on life support.
So what they doing is they trying to get the responsibility off of them.
Exactly.
How you bond somebody out that's on life support? You know what? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I got you, because that's where I was at. So Almir comes home with us, you know, and he's doing okay. You know, I'm doing my best to make sure I'm getting him the supportive services that he needs outside of being enrolled in school. And he was enrolled at the time at Fayette County High School. I made sure that he was going to see a psychiatrist.
How is his mindset at this time? Where is he at mentally?
He was good. I promise you, Almir was good. He was, you know, I guess maybe a little bit struggling, but he was really engaged in school. I promise you, his teachers adored him. He was involved in everything he could be involved in. You know, Almir loved to sing.
Yep.
Singing wasn't his strong suit, but he loved.
But he loved it though. He loved it.
He loved to do it. And so he would go to all the talent shows. He actually joined the choir at his school.
Yeah.
And they had I gotta find those videos too. They had an actual a whole performance, and he had to, you know, be on stage singing, and the whole family we went to, you know, support him.
Yeah.
He was doing well in school. He had even gotten to a point where something happened at the school, and I think they transitioned him from the school to a place called Mainstay Academy.
Okay.
He had to go to Mainstay for like a year. And then once he demonstrated that he could handle the social setting of regular school, he was able to transition back to Fayette County High School, which he did do. And he was very helpful to several children who had autism. And the teachers were just amazed that Almir was able to get these kids to do things they'd never seen before, like dance or clap or you know, just have expressions of happiness. And Almir was able to pull that out of these children. So one specific teacher that he had is very unfortunate that she's a very integral part of this tragic story with Almir. When Almir turned 18, I mean, he had gone on his senior prom. and we were just about ready for him to graduate from school. He was going to graduate, but continue on in a program called Plus 12. So even though he had graduated, he would still be able to stay at his high school for I think 2 more years.
Okay.
To receive services. So, I was pretty good at making sure he had the supports that he needed.
Right.
But once he turned 18, I don't know what was going on, whether it was hormonal or, if he was talking to people that were just putting stuff in his head, but he just decided he didn't want to live with us anymore. There was no reason why he couldn't. He just didn't want to. And so his former teacher decided it was a good idea for her to rent him a room in her house.
So this is a teacher from the school?
It was one of his former teachers from his school. And she decided, and I guess because maybe she needed the money, that it was a good idea to offer him to rent a room in her house.
And because of his age, because he's 18,
mm-hmm.
this is legal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And there was nothing I could do about it because I did not agree with it, but there was nothing I could do, honestly. So, and please understand that I have a whole power of attorney for my son. I do.
Yeah.
But my power of attorney only allows me to keep him from refusing medical treatment.
Gotcha.
Basically. That, and I'm able to handle his finances, but, I can't make him stay in my house or anything like that. It's like, he's still an adult. So, long story short, he's at her house for not even an entire week when the episode happened that caused him to be incarcerated. I believe the story I was told was that he had a steak knife in his hand.
Okay. And
he didn't cut anybody. He didn't swing it at anybody, but he had it in his hand. And he was like, I need you to take me to my mother's house.
So, so I have a question. So this teacher was familiar with Almir, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And she's trained to deal with, his mindset and, the way that he moves. And they had a relationship.
I would have thought she was trained. Yeah, I would have thought that she was trained.
Clearly, that was just for the classroom, because outside of the classroom, it didn't last long at all.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So, long story short, she ends up driving from where she lived at the time, which I believe was Tucker, Georgia. She drove him back to Fayetteville, and she was calling me like, I don't know what you want me to do with your son. And I said, well, what are you talking about? I paid you his rent. You can't put him out.
Yeah.
I mean, you wanted that money. So, I mean, he lives with you. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
So she ended up calling Fayette County PD.
Oh, my God.
They came to wherever she was at. I don't know where she was parked at, but they came to where she was at. And I guess she explained the story to them of what had happened in her home. And they actually arrested Almir, and then they slapped him with an assault charge, which has a minimum sentence of 10 years.
Hold on, what county is this?
Fayette County.
So now he's got an aggravated assault charge.
Yes. That comes with an automatic minimum sentence of 10 years.
Yeah, that's a mandatory minimum. That's actually a SB 440.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm familiar with it.
So he goes to, he's in Fayette County for a year before they even took him to court or whatever. They never communicated with me when he had court or a trial coming up or anything, and he wasn't really clear on what was going on, so I never knew when he was supposed to be in court so that I could go to support him or anything. And so when he went to court, we had hired an attorney for him. We didn't give him
I don't mean to keep interrupting, but he stayed in the county for a whole year?
Yes. He was at Fayette County for an entire
What's his
year.
mindset? Are you guys communicating? Are you able to visit him at this time, or?
They weren't. I'm so glad you asked that specific question. I was not allowed to visit my son. I wasn't even allowed to talk to my son. My son didn't even call me on the phone. And when I called the captain at the jail to inquire why is it I cannot talk to my son, I can't come visit my son, this fool had the audacity to tell me, because you're his trigger.
Are you serious?
I'm very serious. I'm very serious. They did not allow me to see my son for an entire year. And when that year was up, he went to court like I said, he did not have a court-appointed attorney. We hired an attorney for him. The attorney was texting me while he was in court, and he said they're offering him 2 years with time served, meaning that he has to go to prison for a year. And they did that. They sent him to prison for a year. The first time he had a serious incarceration. It wasn't at the county jail. He was actually in prison. And so he served his time. He was released February 1 of 2023. And my husband and I, we drove up to pick him up to be there when they released him. And we brought him back home, and we tried to, just try to help him integrate back into society because he'd been incarcerated for 2 years. And he struggled a little bit. He was quite different than I had remembered my son, and how he operated and how he managed. And when he finally snapped out of it, we endured, I want to say, 30 hospitalizations, with about 27 of them being in intensive care. Mm-hmm. And several of them were on life support because of the DKA. I also learned that during his incarceration, the first time he was incarcerated was at Phillips State Prison.
That is, wait a minute, because Phillips State Prison is, excuse my language, that's a prison that's cut out for Almir is not Phillips State Prison material. I know several people who have been stabbed and killed at Phillips State Prison.
Let me tell you, you missed one because I didn't tell you. When he left Jackson, and Jackson is the
oh my God,
prison, that's where they process everybody.
Jackson is the jungle.
Yeah, they sent him to Jackson first, and then they took him from Jackson and they sent him to Valdosta State Prison. I was getting phone calls from inmates saying, "Miss, we know something's a little different about your son. We don't know exactly what's wrong with him, but I promise you, you need to call up here and get these people to get him out of here, because this is the #1 prison in the state of Georgia for murders. And if they put him in the general population, you're going to lose your son." So when I did call up there and I spoke with the lady who was supposed to be his counselor, I guess at the time, she said, "Ma'am, I'm aware. We're working feverishly to get him out of here." And they moved him from Valdosta State Prison to Phillips State Prison.
He went from hell to hell.
Exactly. And he was in Phillips State Prison for an entire year. When I tell you, my son, he experienced being assaulted. He experienced sexual assault. He had been beaten so many times. And I had to get to a point that I just stopped putting money on his books because he was just being taken advantage of.
That place is known for extortion. It's known. The police do not have control of that particular prison. It's off the chain. It's drugs. It's murder.
And that's what I was leading to, because I know you didn't know, and I'm sure it's gonna hurt your heart as much as it hurt my heart. When Almir was released from Phillips State Prison, with all the hospitalizations and things, there was a night that Almir disappeared, and we couldn't find him. And when we did find him, he was in the hospital. And so being in the hospital, with his diabetes and stuff, they run all kinds of blood tests, everything. And when the doctor called me, he said, "You do know that your son tested positive for crystal meth?"
No.
I couldn't believe it. My son didn't even smoke as much as a cigarette.
No drug. So he went... That's what I'm saying. He went to prison and came home with a crystal meth. Man.
Yes. I said, how did that happen? How did my son get introduced to meth, incarcerated? He hadn't smoked as much as a damn cigarette, a black amount, nothing in the street, because we not no smoking people.
Right.
We don't smoke. We don't do no drugs. He learned that in prison. And I kept trying to tell him, when I found out about it, I said, "Baby, listen, your mama smokes cigars like I do, and I enjoy cigars." I said, "Let mommy introduce you to the world of a cigar. Don't put them drugs in your body. Don't do that."
Right.
And, he said, "Okay, Ma, I might be open to that. I might be open to it." But he kept saying, "I want to go to the store and get me a pack of Black and Milds." I'm like, "Baby, you can't smoke in my house now."
Yeah.
We don't smoke around here, so you can't smoke in the house. But, it was futile. My trying to reach him was futile at the time. And so he continued on. back and forth. I'm constantly reaching out to these probation officers that lied on my son, talk about, he was in violation. Now, of course, the meth was a violation, and it came up in his medical record.
So that drug use is violent. But, oh, my God. Do you know what? It's a catch-22.
But my thing is, I feel like they scapegoated my son because they weren't doing their job, number one. The probation officer that I was talking to, and if I got to dig through my phone to find his name, but he wasn't doing his job. I kept calling this man. My son came home February 1st. He had not been seen by any community supervision officer at all. I had been calling. I took him the first time we went to Atlanta probation office. They said, okay, well, we're going to refer him back to his county of origination, which was Henry County.
Okay.
And I said, okay, no problem. We'll just take him to Henry County to report. And so when I'm trying to reach out to these people, when I finally got to, I think the fifth person I talked to was supposed to be the probation officer. And he actually, the first time I called his phone, he answered the phone. When I told him who I was and why I was calling, I gave him my son's name, his GDC ID number. He hung up on me.
What?
And then sent me a text message, talk about text me, please. I said, well, ain't this... Anyway, I went ahead and I texted him the information. I texted him my son's name, his GDC ID number, his release date. And I let him know, he was released in February, but here we are around May, and he still hasn't had any community supervision. And I already know that they get ready to set him up. So I was really upset about it.
I hate to keep interrupting. When you communicated with him, did you send any type of email or anything that could have been timestamped, if that makes sense?
Let me tell you something. I have 30 unanswered text messages on my phone from this man. 30 unanswered. And that's why I said he wasn't doing his job. So I guess whenever it got down to the point that he couldn't explain, I guess, to the court why this person didn't have any documentation of being supervised, he just decided to issue a warrant for Almir and just say he was in probation violation, which he wasn't. The thing about his the crystal meth thing, they didn't have that information. I don't know how they ended up getting it, but I'm assuming that they were able to pull his medical records. When I told him one of the reasons why he had not been reporting is because I have discharge papers from 25 different hospitalizations.
Okay.
So it's just, we get from there to June the 6th. Almir, he came here, and I think I might have turned his cell phone off or something. I forget what happened, but he was upset. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. And I think I may have turned his cell phone off, and he was upset, so he called the police on me. And the police came, but I never saw the police because he was outside, and I guess when they asked him for his identification, they realized that he had a warrant for probation violation, and so he was rearrested. And that was the last day I saw my son, was June 6th of 2023, until this past Friday.
So 2023, because he has a warrant, he's technically violated his probation. So he's sent back to prison.
Yes, and they revoked 4 years of his probation.
Oh my God.
He was supposed to be incarcerated this time for 4 years.
And where did they ship him to?
Originally, when he left Jackson State this time, after he was processed, they sent him to Central State Prison.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he went to Central, and I think one of the images I sent you is from Central State Prison.
Where he got the big old knot on his head?
Oh, yes. And he said that was from an officer. An officer hit him in his head, I guess with a baton or something, because he was trying to get a book after they told him to go somewhere. They were telling him, the inmates, to go somewhere, and he was like, okay, hold up, let me go grab my book. I had just sent him a copy of Will Smith's autobiography.
Okay.
And he was reading the book, and he had left it, I guess, sitting on the table. He wanted to grab it, And he said, when I told him, oh, can I grab my book? He said, he just came out and hit me in my head.
It's just, I'm just dumbfounded by that. You have somebody who has a medical condition. That means that in order to communicate with him, you have to get personal. You cannot be impersonal with him, or it's just not going to translate. There's going to be a miscommunication. And this is documented. So I don't understand, how is he even in regular housing with people who comprehend on a different level? How are you expecting? I'm sorry.
No, I get it. I'm glad you're feeling all that, because I promise you, I've been feeling all this for the last few years that I've been living it. It's been a nightmare. So they take him from Central State Prison, and I think the only reason they moved him is because I talked to his counselor one day, and I asked her, I said, could you confirm for me which medications my son is on? She said, oh, he's on his insulin. He has a one he's supposed to take in the daytime and one he takes at night. I said, that's correct. Because you confirm for me his other meds? Yeah. She said, what do you mean? I said, because you confirm for me that he's been receiving his psych medications. She said, oh, he don't take no psych meds. That's not in his file. I said, so my son been in your facilities for 6 months and y'all ain't gave him no psych meds the whole 6 months he been there?
He off the chain.
Let me tell you something. 2 days later, he was at Baldwin State Prison.
So they transferred him?
Yep.
But Baldwin is not a good place. Baldwin ain't no good place.
I already know.
Now, is he on a medical floor? Where he in regular population?
No. They claim that Baldwin State Prison, they claim that the whole prison is for people like my son. That's what they claim.
I know of 2 people that have been stabbed and killed at Baldwin State Prison.
I already know. Almir has called me a couple of times. I guess he had gotten some of those oodles and noodles things from different people. Right.
Not good. Not a good idea.
Exactly. And then, they come back with oh, you owe me. You're going to have to pay me. Yep. This is what it is, or we're going to shank you up. And he would call me crying like, Mommy, I need you to send me some money. And I had to tell him, I was like, Almir, from now on, you're going to have to bite the bullet, baby, but you can't keep borrowing stuff from people. I need you to stop doing that. Stop borrowing stuff from people.
But he doesn't comprehend that way, though. His mind is not set up that way.
Right, he don't understand that. He just know that he see oodles and noodles and he's hungry because of that bull crap that they feed you when you're in prison. So he decides that he wants to have these things. And I had to, really knuckle down with him. Like, you can't have that. You have to stop. You have to stop because you're going to get hurt. Excuse me. So, unfortunately, Baldwin State Prison is where everything ended.
And so, what happens? How does he get to the point where he passed? I mean, what happened?
So, excuse me. What I learned was on Thanksgiving, leading up to Thanksgiving, Almir called home just about every day. He was calling me, Mommy, Mama, they won't give me my insulin. Mama, they not letting me have my insulin. The guard's telling me, he said the medical is upstairs. You have to go upstairs to medical. And I keep trying to go up the steps and they won't let me go up the steps. And the guard is telling me they don't know nothing about me being no diabetic. They don't care, they don't care what I'm talking about. Go sit down somewhere. He's like, Mama, I'm so sick. He's like, if they don't give me my insulin, Mama, I'm going to die in here. I'm so sick. I'm vomiting. My hands is clammy. I can't eat because he can't eat without insulin. So this is leading up to Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving Day, he calls home. He seemed a little more calm, even though he still said he was sick. He got to talk to our entire family. And then on the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I was told 2 weeks later, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, Almir collapsed. They found him unresponsive. They rushed him to the hospital. No, let me correct my speaking. They didn't rush him to the hospital. One of the inmates told me that a lieutenant had I think he said other inmates put my son in the back of her car, and she drove him to the hospital. They didn't call for no ambulance because, that's a paper trail. So he goes to the hospital. He's on life support because he is now in full-blown DKA. He's in the hospital for, my understanding, is 14 days. He gets out. They dropped him back off at the prison.
So, but you didn't know he had been in the hospital.
They did not contact me. They didn't tell me anything. They didn't contact my husband. They tell nobody that my son was in the hospital and that he was on life support. They didn't notify us of anything. So, this is on, when I get the call from him that he's back at the prison, was on December the 8th, which was a Sunday, I believe. The very next day, well, when he called me, he couldn't talk. When you're intubated like that, you're hoarse for a long time, so you don't have a voice. Like, you really can't talk. You ain't getting out a whisper, I promise you. And that's how he was. So I kept telling him, I said, can you please get one of the other inmates to come to the phone? So he did. The guy that came to the phone said to me, I don't need to translate to you what he's telling you. I could tell you what happened because we all witnessed it.
Okay.
And he said they were not giving your son his insulin. They wouldn't let him go upstairs to medical to get it. And he collapsed on Sunday after Thanksgiving. He said, did you talk to him Thanksgiving? I said, we did. He said, okay, that was on Thursday. On Sunday, he collapsed. He was supposed to call home on Saturday. Those were our set days to talk, Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Right.
He didn't call on Saturday, and I was wondering why. But then I found out on Sunday, he ended up in the hospital on life support. So now he gets out the hospital on December the 8th. December the 9th, I talked to him through some other inmates. I got some information. I actually ended up communicating with some inmates to get some pictures of my son. Because one of the guys was like, I mean, outside the fact that he just got out of the hospital, like, why do we have all these other injuries? And I said, what are you talking about? He said he have, like, the top of his right ear is missing. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. He said, and then he's got this big, like a big, what do you call it? A big, it was like a big bruise over, a contusion over his mouth. Like in his mustache, there was a big bruise and it was all bloody and caked up in his mustache. He had a cut on his thigh, and then his feet, due to the diabetes and the fact that his body was still probably very acidic.
They swole.
They weren't swollen. You know how you burn yourself and you get that little blister with the water in it?
Yeah.
His whole feet had the big blisters with the water in it. And his toes were turning black. So he had gangrene. That much I do know. He definitely had some gangrene. And I couldn't understand how the hospital would discharge him in that condition. Because I talked to him. I'm telling you, the pictures I have are the day after he was discharged from the hospital. So now, we moved forward to the 10th of December. I sat down and I composed a letter. It was a 2-page letter. I sent it to all of the news media outlets. I sent it to my local congressperson, and I sent a copy to Raphael Warnock's office. Okay. Everybody else I faxed it to. But when I called Senator Warnock's office, they said, oh, you have to send an email. They gave me the email address, and I emailed it. That's on December the 10th. December the 13th, which was just 3 days later on Friday. Oh, isn't that wonderful? I get a call from the warden.
Okay.
And she tells me she's calling me.
Hold on. Who is this warden?
Oh, her name is Takia Jester. And ain't that appropriate because a jester is a clown.
I am familiar. And I am not a fan.
I know that's right.
I'm not a fan. And oh my God. Okay, I'm sorry, but my mama yeah, okay. She is not a good person. She is not a good person.
No, she is not. No, and I'm coming for her. I promise you that. I'm coming for her.
Yeah, she is not a good person.
So she calls me, and we're going to, at some point, we're going to release that audio because as a mother, as the daughter of 2 law enforcement officers, my mother was a detective and my father was a cop. My mother was the first black female cop in the city of Philadelphia.
Wow.
I was raised under law enforcement, so my instinct told me to record that phone call.
Wait, so you had a phone call with the warden and you recorded it?
Oh, yes, sir.
I can't wait for you to release it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, because it's telling. It's very telling. And it's damning as well, because on December the 13th, you promised me, you gave me your word that you, your staff, the medical staff, all your corrections officers were now given information that Almir must have his insulin and he must be able to go to medical without being hindered at all.
Yeah.
So how is it that you call me on December 31st, on New Year's Eve, to tell me that my son is deceased? Now, there's some things that I know there's some questions that need to be asked. I got questions, they don't got no answers. Because you call me, and the first thing you say to me is, there was no foul play. Okay, so then how did my son die? Well, it has not yet been determined. Okay, so
how you know it ain't no foul play? If it has
Thank you. That was my question. Thank you. How is it? How do you know there's no foul play if it has not yet been determined? Well, we feel like it's related to his diabetes. And I didn't say nothing else because I'm like, okay, so now y'all telling me y'all still wasn't giving him his insulin. And his body that got so acidic that even if you are giving him some, it ain't enough to do nothing. So that was the first thing. Second thing was I was told my son was found at 1:33 a.m. On December the 31st in the day room where the TV and the telephones are that the inmates use. And I'm like, oh.
They're allowed in the day room at 1:33 a.m.?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I believe lockdown is supposed to be at 6 p.m.
Right.
So if you have lockdown and count up of your inmates, how did you not account for Mr. Harris at 6 o'clock? But I was also given information via text message. These inmates were trying to alert the staff that, look, something's wrong with him. Y'all need to come in here and get him. They're like, oh, he's just playing. Ain't nobody playing. Ain't nobody got time for him today. And I'm like, okay, so this happened a couple hours before lockdown. They're in the day room. Almir is sick. He's in a chair slumped over. Backwards is what I was told. So you don't come to check on him when the inmates tell you need to check on him, which is a couple hours before lockdown. Then you have lockdown. You don't account for him during lockdown because the other thing is my son was homeless inside this prison. He didn't have an assigned cell.
What?
Almir told me several times he did not have an assigned cell, and several other inmates told me that.
That sound like overcrowding. I'm so confused as to the protocol. How you not having a sign? So he's in the day room?
He was in the day room most likely because he don't have an assigned cell. And so, but the thing was, he was in the day room during the time that everybody else was in the day room. Once they had lockdown, it's time for count up and lockdown. Everybody else go back to their cells and their dorms. Almir's still in this chair. And I pray to God we get that footage from them cameras because, the day room is where all the fights break out. So they got cameras in there.
They're not going to, it'll get lost.
No, the attorney's going to find that. I promise you that. The attorneys is going to get that footage. They're going to get it. They're going to get it. I said, this is craziness, but my whole thing is, if these inmates is trying to alert you prior to lockdown, that means before 6 o'clock. And I want to say maybe, let's just guess and say maybe by 4 o'clock. They trying to tell these people my son is sick and y'all need to come and get him. And they don't get him from 4 o'clock. Lockup is at 6 o'clock. You found my son at 1:33 in the morning. Do you know how many hours my son was in that chair? My son died and you just let his body lay in that chair. And then you decide to look at him at 1:33 in the morning and say, oh, he dead. We gonna pronounce
somebody lying. Somebody is lying and they ain't did their job. Somebody is lying. A lot of people is lying.
And the other thing that, was disturbing to me, and I'm waiting, is like, we've talked about some photos that I'm in possession of that we are going to release at some point. But when I went to the funeral home on Friday, the funeral director alerted me and said that she is going to pull my son's body back out, and she's got some more photos she needs to take and give to me.
Okay.
Because there's some stuff that apparently I'm not aware of. This is the most inhumane thing I could ever imagine what happened to my son.
Here's the thing, and this is just my opinion. You got to hit the Department of Corrections in their pocket.
Oh,
Yep.
it's coming. You know, I'm gonna keep it under wraps for right now, but I know that we are waiting right now for the cause of death.
Yep.
And then once the cause of death comes in, I believe that will solidify what we need to move forward, because this is clearly a case of medical neglect and wrongful death.
Yep. I was housed at Alto State Prison when they closed it down. They had a guy down there by the name of Boatwright. Boatwright he was raped. Well, no, he was strangled, so he died, and then they raped him after he died.
Oh, what the?
Yeah.
Oh.
And his grandmother sued. She sued. And let me tell you something. They closed it. Alto State Prison now is a female facility. When I tell you that they packed all of us up and moved us up out of those facilities,
I can believe it.
That's the only way, because all the boo-hooing, they don't care nothing about none of that. You got to hit them in the pocket. And it's not just for Almir. It's for any kid. Any kid that is in defects custody, that is unnecessarily, prematurely, and unrightfully sent to or sentenced to prison.
And see, this was the thing back in 2018 when Almir ended up on life support because of Victor Hill. And I promise you, my son was telling me about that infamous chair that they used to tase them in. Almir told me he had been in that chair. He didn't know what it was at the time, but he was like, "Mommy, they handcuffed me in this chair and was tasing me on my legs and stuff." And he had the burn marks to prove it.
Oh my God!
And it was. I'm telling you, that in itself was an ordeal. But you know, we definitely are seeking justice for Almir. My family is certainly seeking justice for Almir, and just like I said, I'm gonna keep it under wraps right now. But everybody know who the #1 civil rights attorney is.
Right.
So that's where we.
This is what I want you to know, is that whatever you need for me to do, I don't care what it is. I'm on standby. My phone is on 24/7. I'm sorry for your loss. Your son was an awesome human being. I know this personally because I sat down and talked to him on several days.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'm baffled. I'm baffled because I report and I talk about people being taken advantage of in the prison system, and I try to tell people, hey man, don't do this. And then I got a homeboy who came home. When he went to jail, he was this big old player, and then he came home. He was addicted to meth and ended up ODing on meth.
I think they've created that system. Because, you know, they're the ones that put the drugs in our communities in the first place.
Listen to me now. Let's talk about it. Let's talk. We've been on the phone for about an hour, but listen to me.
I'm good.
I climbed down a rabbit hole the other day, and I just went. When I tell you I did, I don't know why, but God keep putting me in situations, and every time. So I'm riding. My family got a trucking company. I'm driving in the truck, and I just started listening, and I run across the Iran-Contra scandal. And I started listening to the testimony of Oliver, I think it's Oliver North or something, but he worked for Ronald Reagan. And then I remember years ago, I interviewed the real Rick Ross because I used to do radio. And then it just started coming together. I said, man, then I started thinking about every leader that we had. So every leader that we had, let's go from Martin. They killed Martin. They killed Martin Luther King's mama and his brother.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay. They killed Malcolm X.
Yep.
They killed Huey P. Newton, and he ended up getting addicted to drugs. So any power structure that we've had, they have either directly assassinated these individuals, and then what they did was, in order to quiet the righteousness and the rebelliousness and the revolutionizing of our people, they introduced drugs into our community, and it is still having an effect on us. And the thing is that when I tell you that I have seen my I don't want to put none of my parents on blast. I'll just say that I'm a victim of Reaganomics, because this sucker then put tons of drugs in the community. I'm talking to a guy who said he was making $1 to $3 million a day with drugs that he was getting from the CIA. And then this got the audacity to create a war on drugs. His wife, her slogan was just say no to drugs. Okay, so now what we have is, now we got mass incarceration. Now, it goes so deep. It goes so deep because when I started doing the research, I said, man, you know what? I started doing the research on different prisons. And I say, well, you know, the Angola prison they have free labor there because people are incarcerated. But the Angola prison is on the very same property that they had the Angola plantation on. All they did was change the sign. They just changed the sign. And I'm talking to people that in the Georgia State prison system, man, you had a young lady, some kind of way, at this secured facility, you got an individual that got a handgun inside the state prison.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
They didn't kill.
There was recently a shooting. It was a murder. They
killed her. They killed this young lady. She was a cafeteria worker.
About somebody else, because the one I'm talking about was recent. I can't remember exactly which prison it was, but it was here in Georgia. It was a murder-suicide, a gay couple in a male prison.
You know what? I'm not surprised. I got a phone call from a gang member. When I put the story up, the numbers went up real bad. But one of the guys I had been locked up with years and years ago, he asked, could I please take the video down because they was going to do something to him. And I was like, I never put a story up that will hurt you. So I took the story down. But it's so much corruption that is taking place in the Georgia prison system. And right now they taking the test scores of our kids and they determining that the governor has
they
got a budget. He got a $1.5 billion budget to build more prisons in the state of Georgia.
They trying to catch up with Texas. You know, Texas got over 300 prisons.
That's crazy. And
over 300 prisons.
Rehabilitation is not taking place. These individuals are coming home. The state of Georgia got one of the highest percentages of recidivism. Recidivism is the rate at which individuals return back to prison. They're not even expecting us to stay out no longer than 18 months.
Exactly.
You know what?
And when you get a chance, go back on my post, because a young lady, I don't know who she was, asked me. She was like, "What happened? He had gotten out. He came back." And I responded to her. In length. That's what I'm saying. When you
I'm gonna definitely check it out. This is just the first story on this page. I'm gonna report from different pages. It's gonna be different content, but whatever I can do. And this is not. Almir death his wrongful death will not be in vain. It will not be in vain because it's other people that's listening. If you have a child in these United States, in this state, that is been diagnosed with anything, and your child could be sitting in one of these facilities being neglected by people that you pay with your money, with your tax dollars.
Exactly, and that's why I said, I'm going to make a point of trying to tell some of these mothers, I'm going to need y'all to take it and put your work boots on, because we got some work to do.
Let's get it done.
If you feel like you don't want to do the work, go and put your walking shoes on, because you're going to be standing in my place next.
Let's get it done.
We need to get the work done, because this is ridiculous. Nobody's child, and I know they look at it like, oh, he's a grown man. You know what? That's a grown man. I mean, that's a little boy in a grown man's body.
Yep.
They don't understand autism. They don't understand these mental health disorders. They don't understand that, these people you have a chronological age, you have a psychological age, and you have an actual age, like an actual calendar age. Right. And you have an emotional age as well.
Right.
And it's like, Almir has been through so much stuff, and it breaks my heart. I was telling somebody earlier, I was talking to somebody that has known Almir his entire life.
Okay.
His coming to the world, he was a premature baby. He was born at 26 weeks gestation. He was 2 pounds. He was smaller than a Coca-Cola can. And he was intubated. He was in the hospital. He lived in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. He lived there until he was 5 months old.
Wow.
I couldn't bring my baby home from the hospital until he was 5 months old. He gets home. He's on oxygen 24 hours a day with 13 different medications. His coming into the world was hard. But I promise you, what I understand is everything that happens is supposed to, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is the ugly for me. And it was supposed to happen, and I understand that. I did not ever expect that my son was going to be no hashtag, but he is. And I'm going to do whatever work I got to do to try to protect another mother or another family from having to deal with the pain and devastation of what my family is dealing with right now.
Without a doubt. It has to be done. That's why I do the work that I do, because at some point in time, 20-some odd years ago, I was sitting in the cell, and I seen that look in my mama's eyes, and I said, to the death of me, I'm going to stop somebody from feeling this pain that is going on right now. You got me for 10 years, but guess what? I'm going to keep so many of them out of here. I make money, I got property, I do a lot of stuff, I travel, but let me tell you something, I'm not ever at peace for real, unless I'm putting in that work, unless I'm helping somebody.
I promise you, Mr. Butler, this is not anything that I ever anticipated was going to become a part of my life. But I promise you, I'm going to partner with you, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to do what I can to help other families, because this is horrific. And the ordeal that I've been dealing with my son, I mean, he was 14 years old when it started, and he was 23 years old when it ended. And this has been a horrible experience for me. It's been horrible for my son. I mean, it's worse for my son than it is for me.
Yeah.
Because, it cost him his life. And I tell you one thing, Almir always said he wanted to be famous.
He did.
He always said he was going to be famous.
He did.
And I said, you know what? He going to be famous. Not in the way that he would have wanted to be. But he going to be famous because people going to say his name and they going to know his name.
He will have a positive addition to the world.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to end this, but we will be back. We got an hour and some change on here. I appreciate your time, because I know what you and your family going through. I appreciate you taking this phone call. I'm going to post this. I'm going to try to put the hyperlink in for the GoFundMe. I'm putting this up on the page right now. If you're listening to this, please go to the link that I'm going to leave in the description. In honor of Almir, I thank you. I'm going to say good night, but I know I'm going to talk to you tomorrow, and just know that we on standby. And I got a team of people that's ready to take instructions and get the job done.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, good night.
Good night. Hey, man. Life is short, bro. Life is short, man. Love your people while you still got them. Love your people while you still got them, bro. Almir was a good person. He was a good person, man. He's the reason why I do things the way that I do them, to one degree or another. He helped me understand the importance of really trying to help somebody, because you can have the title and not have the heart to do that work, and you'll just end up being in the way of somebody that's really gonna help. So like, share, subscribe. I need for you to share this video, man. Share this video, man, and let's have a dialogue. Man, rest in peace, Almir, man. We out.